defense in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is pretty simple. It includes a few things such as movement, guarding, vanishing, and finally the most important one, countering. Counters are incredibly important to the battle mechanics of every fight, because there's damn near 3 to 4 counters that you can utilize in this game. We're talking super counters, revenge counters, sonic sway, and finally, the topic of today's video is perception counters. Perception counters are arguably the most important form of defense in this game, with super counters coming in as a close second. This is because of how effective it is in the neutral game. Sparking Zero being an arena fighter will often see most battles spent in neutral, where both opponents have an equal standing or advantage in initiating. Whether it be charging up your ki or simply waiting to punish your aggressive opponent, every neutral game has its reasons. In Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, the most effective tool to stop an aggressive opponent is the perception counter. On classic controls, this counter is activated by clicking circle and X on the PS or A and B on the Xbox at the same time, while standard controls triggers the counter by simply pressing the circle button or B on the Xbox. Perception is a counter that, once activated, throws up a stance, and if your opponent lands a melee attack on your character while you are in this stance, they will be punished by a counter attack. Depending on how much perception is held down, the more effective the counter will be. For instance, if you hold down the buttons for perception as your opponent hits you, the counter attack will be a heavy gut punch, and that punch will stun your opponent for a few seconds. So now that we've finished the explanation segment of perception, what's the problem with it, and how do we go about countering perception spamming players? Well, perception is often spammed and used a whole lot by players that struggle to initiate in battle. Countering with perception lets these players take initiative by not having to be aggressive or take any risks at all. Not knowing how to deal with these players can lead to fights being very stale, dry, and damn near unplayable. Luckily, there are a few ways to work around perception, including punishes for players that love to spam it. First of all, this one's a very obvious one, and it's grab. Grabbing cannot be countered and can only be parried, unless of course the grab is done by a UI Goku or Broly that have untechable grab. Grabs can punish perception spamming players and let you even launch a follow-up combo. In general, if the opponent refuses to stop perception spamming, constantly using grabs to mitigate their strategy is an effective way to work around it. And next up is the Ki Blast spam. Now this one's a more controversial counter to perception spamming players, and that's mainly because of those Broly and Kefla players running wild that constantly abuse this technique. Ki Blast spam is when you spend a lot of your ki bar and simply throwing out a bunch of ki blasts at your opponent, leaving them in a position where they either take a lot of damage from the ki blast or hold down the block button to guard or deflect the ki blast, which also leaves them in an animation and leaves them in a defensive position, or at minus, which is also known as a disadvantageous position. Regularly using ki blast to then follow up with melee attacks can be good to punish use of these counters, as it'll at least be a little bit of damage because of perception's incapability to counter ki blasts. Another strategy that's effective in countering perception is movement. Movement in Sparking Zero is incredibly underrated, but as we all know, the game is a 3D arena fighter. 3D aspects of this game are very effective in battle when taken advantage of. Perception counters can only activate if your opponent attacks you from head on. If a player sidesteps and attacks from behind or the side, these counters typically do not activate, and the perception using player is punished as obviously they're stuck in the perception counter stance. Sometimes the game does have jank or issues when attacking perception stances from the side, as it still activates but doesn't hit your character. Honestly, this is probably a gameplay glitch, but if I had to guess, but who knows. Hopefully the December patch fixes this issue too. Finally, the last strategy mentioned in this video for working around perception spamming is super attacks. And yeah, this one's also a bit of an obvious one, but if you see your opponent constantly using perception in your face and have the ki, using rush attack supers are perfect to punish these opponents. Perception cannot counter rush super attacks, but ki blast supers like Kamehameha can be countered with perception if your opponent has 2 battle stocks, as they can deflect your beam. Rush attack supers not only punish perception, but also take out a bar of your opponent's health, reminding them that this is a battle, not a counterfest. So, all in all, what do you think about these strategies to counter perception, and what do you think about this move in battle? Do you think the game dev should adjust perception and make it more or less effective, or do you think it's fine just as? Let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video and want to see more quality Sparking Zero content, do consider hitting that subscribe button down below. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.